Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the ice fishing riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. By 2019, the Public Health Agency Canada, PHAC, was no longer Canada's early warning system for pandemics. The Liberals had repurposed it to study vaping. We still do not have an effective pandemic early warning system. PHAC also bulldozed what PP Canada did have to save rental costs. Now we've learned instead of approving antiviral pills, Health Canada was busy collecting location data from 33 million phones. Even after the massive data grab was revealed, Health Canada is still seeking bids from the companies to collect this data for the next 5 years. Conservatives have scheduled an emergency meeting of the Privacy Committee to get to the bottom of this massive data grab. Just before the 2021 election, the Trudeau Liberals had been ordered to hand over documents relating to the firing of scientists at the Level 4 laboratory in Winnipeg to the House of Commons Standing Committee on Health. The Trudeau government sued the Speaker of the House over the order. That was basically a use of the courts to stall the release of the documents until the Liberals had all their attack pieces in place for an election to be called. The election meant the House of Commons committees and everything they were doing was dissolved. What the committee was told before Trudeau axed it was that the fired scientist had been transporting viruses back and forth between the L4 lab here in Canada to the one in Wuhan, China. Well, the government is finally releasing documents to a selected few MPs who are not allowed to publicly say what's in the documents. Maybe the documents will be made public in 75 years. All may not be lost. South of the border, the U.S. Senate is conducting hearings into the activities of its National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Perhaps testimony will shed light on the reason behind the scientists' firing in Canada, as actions of the U.S. Chief Medical Advisor on the coronavirus are called into question. It wouldn't be the first time we relied on the independence of U.S. representative committees to expose what happened to Canadians. Take the case of the hundreds of Canadian Armed Forces athletes who returned home ill after competing in the World Military Games held in Wuhan, China in October of 2019. In October of 2019, more than 9,000 international athletes from more than 100 countries traveled to Wuhan, China. Many of them returned ill or later got sick with COVID-19 symptoms. In Canada, the MPs on the committees during that parliament never allowed an investigation into whether the virus that causes COVID-19 was already spreading at the World Military Games in Wuhan. Once the existence of COVID-19 had been revealed to the world on December 31st, 2019, Canadian military personnel asked the Surgeon General, the official who provides over the health of the forces, to be tested for the COVID-19 antibodies because they wanted to know if they'd already been sick with it. In a curt letter, the Surgeon General refused the request, stating the virus had not been circulating during the time they were in Wuhan. It should be noted, the journalist who reported on the government's response to the request got a knock at the door from the RCMP about it. The Trudeau Liberals used a national law enforcement agency to intimidate a reporter. U.S. lawmakers have been investigating. The Washington Post reported early in 2020, athletes from several countries, including France, Germany, Italy, and Luxembourg, claimed publicly they had contracted what they believed to be the COVID-19 virus at the Games in Wuhan based on their symptoms and how their illnesses spread to their loved ones. Meanwhile, no one performed any antibody testing or disease tracing on these thousands of athletes. No one even attempted to find out whether the sports event in Wuhan was in fact the first international pandemic superspreader event. The Winter Games in Beijing are just 12 weeks away. Now, as the pandemic wanes, the Liberals are refocusing their efforts on rekindling the hysteria over climate change. Make no mistake, it's a distraction. Slow the spread, flatten the curve, we're all in this together warnings turn back to the greatest threat to our existence. It's life or death. Climate change knows no borders. Aren't you just tired of fear being used by the legacy media to limit you from doing everyday normal things, like driving to work? For people who live in rural communities, using a vehicle to get to work is a way of life. Projections indicate that gasoline prices will rise to over $3 a liter by the end of this year. By the end of this year. Not everyone works from home or has access to the internet to do so, for that matter. Fuel for planes will probably make vacationing in a more hospitable climate unaffordable, except for people who own their own private jet or have friends with jets, or one paid for by taxpayers. It's the climate emergency. For some reason, the media alarmists are saying we just have months to adapt. The latest chorus is, we cannot fix adaptation in a year. Well, they've had since the 1980s, when the world was going to end due to global warming, to the 90s, when the world was going to end due to global warming by the year 2000, to the 2018 warning that we have 12 years to limit climate change catastrophe. We've already been having catastrophes. Yes, they're weather-related catastrophes, but we've paid the taxes. Infrastructure funding has been spent to the tune of billions of dollars alone. Where are the levees, the flood walls, shoreline reinforcements since the first halcyon calls on global warming? Well, we have solar farms up here in the Ottawa Valley where we get 12 usable hours of daylight per week during the winter. The government of France owns one just outside Constance Bay. At the time of construction, it was the most expensive solar farm in Ontario. It's never generated a single watt of usable electricity. But the government of France is still collecting millions of electricity consumers' dollars from it. Who owns all these wind and solar farms that cost us 20 times the price per kilowatt hour it was at the time they were built? Now, good luck in following the money. Canada does not require the same level of transparency for spending by non-governmental organizations as other countries. That's why researcher Vivian Krause must travel to the library in Washington, D.C., checking out tax records of American non-governmental agencies to follow the money. You can read about this in a book called Dark Green Money by Robert Lyman. Robert is an economist with 35 years experience as an analyst, policy advisor, and senior manager in the Canadian federal government. He's a former public service worker who's observed the misdirection of tax dollars for years. Remember, all the players orchestrating the transition from reliable, affordable fuels to technologies that are cost prohibitive to everyday Canadians are the same cabal who destroyed the Ontario economy through the Green Energy Act. They're Trudeau's brain trust today. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.